Hi everyone, and welcome. If this is your first time here, my name is Lorrie, and my channel is Artfully Abstract by Lorrie, which I guess you figured out since you made it here. I'm really glad to have you here. All right, so this is going to be a this is going to be part one of 2 or 3 beginner tutorials that I want to do, because I get so many questions about these things. This one I will not, most likely not, unless I just have lots of time, which I doubt. This one's mostly just going to be on what I use, my supplies. I'm not planning on doing any painting in this one. I will do painting in the next one, showing you some what to do, what not to do. But this is about supplies that I use, some of my most asked questions. All right, so one of them is, what type of paper do I use? Well, I use several different kinds. These, I set a stack out here of my favorite ones, just to show you all. I gotta stand up here and make sure you can see what they are in the camera here. All right, so yeah, this is the Evo Synthetic Paper. It's like synthetic art paper. It's really good, polypropylene. All of these papers are some form of polypropylene. Now, all papers are not created equal. The synthetic paper is not. Some papers, the inks just won't move good on. Some they do great. Some stain, some don't. So I'll try to remember to tell you about each of these as I go through them. All right, the Evo, I really like this. Very smooth. You know, the inks move really good on it. This does stain a little bit, but with a little extra effort, you can get most of the ink off of it. But sometimes I like the staining. The staining actually gives you an extra depth. I don't know any other way to put it, but it does sort of give you an extra depth to your painting. But it does make it a little bit harder to have a painting come out the way you might want it. So keep that in mind. But this is lightly staining, I would say. Before I move on though, let me tell you, with heat, any of these will warp. I don't care what people tell you, every single one of the synthetic polypropylene papers will warp with too much heat. Now that's pretty much the only thing that will warp it, unless you leave it, I don't know, hanging over something for a long time maybe, but or if you bend it, it will obviously bend and stay bent. But it is basically a super thin sheet of plastic. So, I mean, obviously heat is not going to be really good for it. And we'll get into that a little bit more in a little bit. So every one of these will warp. Some will go back to their, at least mostly back to their original flatness as they cool. Some will not. But just be careful with any of them. Just be careful. And it really depends on how much you warp it, whether it goes back to its original flatness or not as it cools. So be careful with all of these papers I'm going to show you, because they will warp with too much heat. All right, so the Evo. Do really like the Evo. Really good paper. I really like all of these, by the way. I should have looked up the current prices on this stuff, I guess, but things change so much that I can't keep up with it. If I do a video with prices, in another month or two, when somebody looks at the video, they're gonna be like, hey, wait a minute, why is that $2 more now? So anyway, I don't know what the prices are. I will put links in the description below to these papers. There are, I do have some Amazon affiliate links there. So, I'll give you the link to the Etc. Papers company as well. They do offer theirs on Amazon, Etc. does, but I think there's a size on their website that you can't get on Amazon, unless they may have changed that by now though. All right, so this is Nara synthetic art paper, another one that I really like. Nara does not stain. It can be wiped clean. I have managed to stain it a little bit but only with the very darkest of my colors. There's only been one or two that I've had it do any staining with, and that's been super dark colors, and I had a lot of ink on. So it just made it harder to get it wiped off. But Nara is another brand, really, really like. All right, this is Graphics Durabrite. This is one I don't see too many other people using, but I actually really like this. And it's not super expensive. Well, for what art papers, you can see I got this one for $12.99. I got this at Hobby Lobby. You can actually find it a little cheaper at times, but I really like it. This is very similar to the Graphics Opaque White Craft Plastic, which I use also, which I'll show you in a minute. But another one that doesn't stain. It's really easy to wipe clean. Very smooth. All these papers are very, very smooth. You don't want a rough surface if you're wanting to do the wispy look. That is what I normally do. You want it to be super smooth. The smoother the better, so that your inks flow good on it. But anyway, Graphics Durabrite. This is the white. It also comes in black. Nara offers a black, and somebody else. Oh, the Graphics Craft Plastic also comes in black. All right, Legion brand Yupo paper. This is another one. This is what you'll see most people, I think, using. So Yupo stains a lot. It really, your ink, when you put it on Yupo, your ink's going to, well, okay, let me back up. I use Ranger brand inks most of the time, the Tim Holtz Ranger inks. Many of those inks, the colors will change when you use them on Yupo, because the Yupo absorbs certain shades out of the ink that are mixed together to make that particular color. So if you're using this is not the color of this ink. It leaked all over my bottle, but this is a purple color. And so if you're using a purple, it's most likely going to stain, depending on which color purple you're using, it's either going to stain purple underneath it and leave you with a lighter purple that will still move, or it's going to stain a bluish kind of shade underneath it. And some of them, like eggplant, which is sort of a grayish purplish kind of color, you can actually, eggplant will break down so completely on this that you will have blue underneath. Just it'll be wherever your inks have when they first start spreading out, that's where it's going to stain it the most. And once your Yupo sort of absorbs the blue out of the color, you're left with this sort of pink color that you can wisp out around it. And I actually have a video where I show that, and I can't remember the number, so I'm really sorry. It's on back there a ways. That's all I can tell you. It's not one of my super recent ones. It's one that I did at least a year or two ago. So that's Yupo. This is medium weight. I also like the heavyweight. I didn't get a pad of it out today, but the heavyweight comes in has a purple cover on it, sort of a dark purple cover. The heavyweight is harder to warp. If you are working with heat, like a heat gun or an embossing tool, I don't know what you call them, the embossing, I don't know if it's an embossing gun. It's an embossing airflow thing. Anyway, those of you who use one know what I mean. So, you do have to be more careful with those because of the heat. So you might want to use the heavyweight rather than the medium. And the last one that I'm going to talk about right now, this is the Graphics Opaque White Craft Plastic. This one is another good one, does not stain. The Graphics, the craft plastic is probably the cheapest of these that you can get, depending on where you look for it at. If you get it, especially in the 25 pack, I wish I could remember how much I paid for this. I completely cannot remember now because I've actually had this one for a while, so I can't remember how much it was. but it is cheaper. Usually, I want to say it will cost you about half as much as the Yupo, if you break it down to how much it costs per sheet. Generally, this opaque white craft plastic is about half the price of what the Yupo and the other papers are. Most of these papers run right around the same prices. Some are a little more than others, some a little less, but it's usually not much more than a few dollars. But the craft plastic in the 25 packs is the best deal. The best deal I found. Okay, I had to break in real quick here. As I was editing, I realized that I should have mentioned the papers are not the only thing that you can do this on. Pretty much any non-porous surface. Smooth things work the best, but it doesn't even have to be smooth. I have done alcohol inks on all kinds of things. This is just, you know, a glass bottle that I picked up. This is a glass from just a cheap picture frame that I got from the dollar store. It was, the frame literally cost me $1. You know, took the glass out of it. You can either put it back in the frame just like it is, without any backing, or you can put something behind it, white, if you want it to show up better or whatever. This is an old coffee creamer bottle that I painted. Yes, I know the red doesn't really match. I didn't do a good job thinking before I did this. I like to mix my coffee creamers together. So like chocolate and vanilla mixed together. So I tend to mix them in these big bottles. And I just decided if it's gonna be sitting on my cabinet, I might as well make it look good. But this just happens to match the kitchen. I wasn't thinking about the fact that it had a red lid when I did it. So keep that in mind. Also, you can do this on canvas. You need to prep your canvas first though, because you don't want to have a lot of tooth, because it will, you know, stop your inks from flowing good. I use usually either Kills 2. I have used Kills 3 if I couldn't find it. If I couldn't find the 2, 3 works as well. Some people use gesso. Gesso does have a little more tooth to it, so keep that in mind. The inks might not move as smoothly. I use the Kills because it is a waterproofing agent, so it does seal everything good so that you don't have so much absorbed into your canvas. As far as when you're done with a canvas or with, you know, things like this, anything, same sealing procedures go. The Camar varnish and whatever else after that you want to top it with. You can put resin over it. You can use the triple thick, I think it's called. I can't remember if that's a Krylon or a Rust-Oleum, but a lot of people use sprays like that as well. But I do highly recommend using the Camar varnish first, because it does keep the inks from reactivating. So, all right, well, I'm going to jump back into the rest of the video now. I'm sorry I made this even longer for you all. So I'll get back at it, back to what I was talking about before. One other thing I did not think to get out, but that I do want to tell you, is photo paper. The glossy inkjet photo paper, you can use the back side of that for practicing on. Fantastic, super cheap. You're talking usually pennies a sheet versus $1 or $2 a sheet. So all brands are not the same. The brand that I like the most is the Office Depot brand. I just get the standard inkjet glossy Office Depot brand and use the back side of it. Kirkland's I have used as well. It comes from Costco. The Kirkland's brand works as well. I have been told the Staples brand works, but there's only one specific one, and I don't know what the difference is in these with Staples, because I haven't used that myself. But the one from Staples that works, I think it has a red cover and it's got pictures of balloons or a child holding balloons or something. So just to let you know about that. You can practice if you've got some at home and want to try it out, give it a try. All right, next, this is the alcohol that I'm currently using. All right, so this is 100%. I was very lucky to actually find the 100% isopropyl alcohol. Do not use denatured alcohol unless you are absolutely 100% wearing a respirator, because you will be breathing a lot more toxic fumes than you will just from the straight up isopropyl alcohol. I get mine from Amazon because I do get it in bulk. Sometimes you can find this in local pharmacies. No, you can't find the 100%, but you can find, I know you can find 91%. Sometimes you'll get lucky and find a 99% in a local pharmacy. Don't use less than the 91%. And the reason for that is you will get this moisture beading on your paper. And since it's not actually paper, it's plastic, that moisture just stays there and it affects your ink and the way it looks. Now, some people like that, and I've actually done paintings where when it's been really humid that I got a lot of that moisture beading and it actually looked kind of cool. But if you don't want that, make sure the higher your percentage, the better. So if you can find 100%, great. If you can't, just don't go less than 91%, because the other 9% of that is water. So, just keep that in mind with isopropyl. Whatever your percentage it says it is, from there up to the 100%, well, that's water. And that's just going to cause you problems, because water and alcohol inks do not play nice together. This is just a few bottles of ink that I grabbed in case I did some painting today. So, like I said, I do use the Ranger Tim Holtz inks the most. I do also like the Pinata inks. Very super pigmented, the Pinata are. The Ranger inks are too. They're really good. There's a lot of good brands out there. You definitely do not have to use what I'm using. Give stuff a try. See what you like. I do like to do that. I like to try out new things. We've been traveling a lot at the moment, so I've not been ordering anything new right now. All right, next ink is the Pinata Brass. This is the only, pretty much the only metallic that I use. Excuse me. When you get it, it is going to look like this. Well, not like this, but it is going to be separated. This does separate very quickly. I've had people send me messages about, there's something wrong with my ink. It's all blue on top and it's only got brass at the bottom. And well, you just shake it up. So, and then you have, I didn't shake it good enough, obviously, but you can see, you just have to shake this really, really good before you use it. Kind of, I don't know if you can hear, it's got little metal balls in there that help mix it. All right, I do pour mine into this. This is it's like a quilling bottle. The little needle nose applicator tip on it. Because I get mine in bottles this size, I obviously, I'll show you, maybe get it open. Yeah, I love my brass, but pouring it out of that hole is not something that, I want to do. That's a little more than even I want on my paintings. So I do get these from Amazon. I'll make sure the link, I'll try to find the links to everything that I've talked about today, and list them below in the description. I do not mix anything with this. My bottles, and this is something, if you're new to this and you're first time ordering bottles, if you're going to get some, make sure you pick a pack that has these tiny little funnels, because it is not fun trying to get something down in this little tiny hole there, trying to pour your ink. You're going to end up losing part of it, just pouring it out places. So running over the sides, all this that mine have run over the sides, that's just me being messy. So make sure if you order some of these that you get some that have the funnels with them, because these things are a lifesaver for when you're using these bottles. When I go looking for links, I'll make sure I find one that's got the funnel. Yeah. Oh, I do not mix this with anything. This is a straight brass. I get asked, I mean, so many times over and over again, if I'm mixing alcohol with my brass in this bottle. I am not. This is just straight up Pinata Brass. The company name is Jacquard. You can usually look it up under either name, but this is just straight Pinata Brass right out of the bottle into this bottle. It's just that I can't pour it out of that really big bottle without getting way too much on my painting. And you will see me use this. This is just my isopropyl alcohol, because obviously when I'm working in a small space on a smaller painting like this, I definitely don't want to use this monster bottle. So I just use my handy little funnels and put that in there. Okay, what else? Oh, the hairdryer. Next most asked question. So a few years ago when I first started this, I think it's been about 3 years ago now when I started learning to do this, the only videos I could find, people were using either embossing tools or heat guns to do it. And I did find one or two that were using hair dryers, but it was always heat. I didn't like that. And I did not like the hair dryer that I had, that I started out using, was just too hot. I was having a lot of trouble with my paper warping. So I went on a search for, I went on Amazon, looked for the worst hair dryer I could find, basically. I literally looked for hair dryers with bad reviews where people said, this didn't have enough power to dry my hair. I hate this thing. You know, it doesn't get hot enough, doesn't have enough power, whatever. And ones that had a cool setting on it. I definitely wanted the cool setting. So this one may not be great for drying your hair, but it's great for this. All right, this is 500 watts. And this is the styling brush type. It did come with like one of the long round brush attachments, which I just took off so that I could hold it like this, because that's another thing that I wanted. The hairdryer I was using, you know, had the handle on the side and then hung down, and it was really hard on my hand and wrist. So I wanted this shape. That was one of the things I loved about the embossing tools I'd seen people using, but I hadn't seen anyone using a hairdryer like this at the time. So I was thrilled to run across this. So this is 500 watts. You definitely don't have to use this particular dryer, but if you're going to get one, do not go above 500 watts. That's something it's really, really important if you want to have any kind of control at all. Because even with this one, you have to learn that control, because it does, on the cool setting, it does have a fairly high airflow. Now you can see this does have the cool, I think you can tell, I use this a lot. The cool, the low, and the high setting, that's the temperature level. Although the low is heat with low air, the high is heat with high air, and the cool is no heat with high air. So you do have to kind of, you know, learn control tips. And that's what I'll talk about in the next video, is actually putting some ink to paper and showing you ways to help you control where your ink is going using this. All right, you can see, well, you can see it's on right now, but it's doing absolutely nothing. But let me show you why. Which, by the way, this is the first one that I bought, and it's still going strong after 3 years. So I've been really happy as far as the quality, the lastingness of it. All right, the reason that it was not on, even though it's on, this is not something you have to have. This is something that was recommended to me by one of my viewers, which I'm thrilled that she let me know about this, because you know, this is like a foot pedal that you would see for a sewing machine that controls the speed of your sewing machine. And all you have to do, this is the plug for it. I plug it into the wall with this one. This, I plug the hair dryer into this, and then you know, you turn the hairdryer on, and then it will, see, watch, there's my hands, nowhere near the dryer. Turning the dryer on usually helps. There we go. See, I hope you can hear it. Hear how low that is? And this is on the cool setting, which is the high airflow. The harder I push the foot pedal, you know, the more air comes out. And I don't have to keep sliding this on and off. I do have some arthritis in my hands, and my thumb is really bad. So it does get a little annoying sometimes when I'm constantly having to use my thumb. So this is not something you have to have. I don't usually use it to control the actual speed of the airflow because I am used to the high airflow and I just forget. But it's super handy to not have to flip the switch on this all the time. Just lift my foot. Okay, so Fordham brand, I'll put the link to that as well. It is this, I think it's called the variable speed control. I know that's what it is, what it does. There are other foot pedals, but some of them will only turn your electronic, whatever you're using on it, will only turn it on and off. It does not control the speed of it. So be sure you get one, if you're going to get one, be sure you get one that's the variable speed control. Finishing out the paintings, another question I get a lot. I don't know why I'm shaking this like you all. I'm standing here shaking it up like I'm going to use it. Okay, when your painting is done, let it dry for at least a couple of days. Definitely. I don't care what you're going to put on it. Let it dry for at least a couple of days. It just kind of needs to cure a little bit. Even more so if you're using a metallic because they're so much thicker. They look dry, but they're not always completely dry. So just be sure you let it dry for a couple of days. First, Camar varnish by Krylon, always my first layers when I'm sealing a painting. A lot of the other sealants will reactivate your inks, and they will spread, they will fade, they will change colors, they do really weird things. This is a water-based varnish, which is, you know, great. That you definitely want a water-based one, but I highly recommend Camar varnish for your initial sealing. Now, I will put usually about 3 coats of the Camar on, and then let it dry good in between coats, you know, 30 minutes, whatever. It kind of varies depending on the heat. Don't do this inside, do this outside. It kind of varies on how warm it is, how quickly it will dry, but try to give it at least 30 minutes between coats. I'll just go out and spray it, you know, come in, do something, go back out. A lot of times, if it's buggy out, I'll spray it outside, and then I just set my my board that I put my paintings on. I'll put it in the garage so I don't have to worry as much about bugs getting stuck in it. But this first, because this will not reactivate your inks as long as they've had time to dry good, to kind of cure. But you don't want to like lay on this super heavy coat of it, especially for your first coat. You know, just lightly, just spray, make sure you get it over the entire painting, and then leave it to dry. Now, once you've got your layers of Camar on, what you do after that's kind of up to you. What I use, and I'm sorry, I don't have a can of this right now. We are not at home at the moment. We travel with my husband's work, and I ran out of my other spray. So luckily I do have the Camar so I can sell my paintings until we get home and I can finish them. The other spray that I use is also by Krylon. It is the UV Archival, and I will put about usually about 3 coats of it on. Light coats, like I said, you know, you don't want to have your paint running while you're doing it. So same deal as with the Camar. You know, once your Camar is completely dried, you can start putting on your UV Archival. You know, maybe 3 light coats. I just do that for extra UV protection because alcohol inks do not have any type, excuse me, everything's blooming here right now. My throat keeps drying out, allergy issues. The alcohol inks do not have any UV protection in them, and they are notorious for fading in the sunlight. Even any artwork, I don't care what it's done with, oils, acrylics, whatever, you don't want to leave it in direct sunlight ever. And and you do want to be kind of careful about it being in any just direct light. Don't hang a painting directly under some big bright LED light in your house or anything like that even. So just, be cautious with where you hang paintings. Let customers know if you start selling your artwork, that you don't want to hang this in direct sunlight because it will cause the colors to fade. But that's the reason I do the extra layers of the UV Archival, just to help slow that fading down. You can also resin. I do recommend you do the Camar first before you resin. You don't have to do the UV Archival if you're going to resin it. I don't have the stuff, when we travel, I don't bring a lot of my supplies with me, obviously, but I will mount a painting on a wooden panel, just like a cradle board or just a solid piece of wood. I mount it on that after I've sealed it with the Camar, and then once it's glued down on there good, you can pour resin over it just like you would an acrylic painting, those of you who are sort of crossing over from the acrylic to the alcohol inks. Okay, just a couple of other little quick things that are super, super handy. Cotton swabs. I use these constantly. Pretty much every painting I do, I use cotton swabs, because sometimes I'll get a little splatter here or there that I don't want. So I'll just drip a couple of drops of alcohol on that and rub it out, which is another good thing if you don't have, wait, let me back up because that wasn't making any sense in my head. That is a good reason not to use paper that stains to where you can't get it off, which pretty much Yupo is the only one that you just absolutely, when it stains and you can't even lighten the stain up. So, but do keep in mind that the Evo paper does stain somewhat, but not nearly as bad as Yupo. One other thing I didn't show you is, this is another thing I like to use. This is Molotow liquid chrome. This is a refill for a Molotow liquid chrome pen that I use for a silver when I want to do silver. This works a little differently than the Pinata Brass does. The brass is the only sort of gold metallic that I use. It moves differently on your paper with your inks and alcohol than the other metallics do. So keep that in mind. If you want the floaty kind of look with some of the little veins and lines, this one is the most likely to give that to you. The liquid chrome, much chunkier. It floats. You'll get a lot of floating with it as well. It's much chunkier, but it blends with your ink a lot faster and easier than the brass does. And so you got to kind of watch out for that. You'll end up with some really pretty color ink because it'll be kind of a pearl color of whatever you're using. So if I use this color with the chrome, this is going to turn out a couple of shades lighter than what it actually should be when the chrome mixes with it. And it leaves it just sort of pearl looking, which is really pretty. But do be careful, because if you blend it too much, you will end up with no little chunks of chrome floating. You're just going to have pearl paint or pearl ink. Let's see, a couple of other things maybe. Trying to get to one of my little tools that I use. This is something that I use a lot too. Sometimes the ink kind of dams up a little bit, and I generally use this back end just to kind of, dab to get the ink moving, where it started to dry. Sometimes it, you know, it kind of dams it up, and you can just gently sort of dab it with that. I've also used this to dip in alcohol, and also there's a pointy end, and just touch it to paper. The alcohol will repel the ink back, and you'll end up with cool little spots and circles. This came from Hobby Lobby. This was in the acrylic paint section. This is not a stump. I have people frequently tell me this because I don't know what this is actually called. I seriously don't remember. It's just one of those things when I was at Hobby Lobby and was like, ooh, that's cool. I could really use that, because I'll show you, this is what I was using. Maybe I'll show you. It's gotten buried down in my thing where I've been digging around. Well, this is one of the ones that I've used. Anyway, this is an old makeup brush that I was just using this back rounded end of it, but it has its own, you know, layer of paint on it. It's black, and I would sometimes get these little black smudges on my paper if I did it too hard, where the alcohol was actually causing that paint to come off. So, but this is not a paper stump or blunt, that whatever you call it. I've heard different people call it different things. This is not one of those that you use for blending charcoals and pastels and things. This is not that. This is just a piece of plastic. You know, this is just some sort of acrylic or plastic. Looks almost like a little tiny plastic knitting needle. But this was in the acrylic paint section. This is handy, but not necessary. And some of the stuff that I show you, you definitely don't need to start out with. What you need to start out with is some paper, you know, 2 or 3 colors of ink, some alcohol, and something to move your ink with. And that's pretty much it. That's pretty much all you need to start out with. I've had people concerned about the cost of starting out, but I mean, I've got quite a bit invested in mine at this point, because I, you know, have gradually bought things and have a lot of different ink colors, and, you know, a couple of different brands, and a lot of the different papers, and then the dryer and the foot pedal. You don't even have to use the hairdryer. I have done a few of them just blowing on them. Now, I don't like to do that, and I don't like to use straws. The straws, first of all, they get too full of moisture and they will drip on your painting if you're not super, super cautious about swapping out straws just every 2 or 3 times that you blow through it. But the biggest reason that I don't like to use straws or just blow on them is because you're just breathing in more alcohol fumes when you do that. Now, you'll hear a lot of different things about the safety of alcohol ink. I have a very well ventilated space. I have an excellently ventilated space at home, plenty of room, big window, a vent fan directly above my work table where I work at home. Even where I am now, there is a vent. I'm looking up like, okay, where was it? Oh yeah, it's directly over my head. There, you know, there's a vent directly over my head. There's a window like back there directly behind me, which is why you're getting a lot of shadow from the window. And plus these are just tall ceilings in here. I have a lot of open space. So I am not as concerned. Oh, I also keep a little like clip-on desk fan that I put on the table. I've clipped it to the edge of the table, and I have it blowing away so that it kind of sucks a little bit of the stuff away. If you don't have a really excellent ventilated space, or if you have any type of breathing problems that could be exacerbated by these fumes, then I highly recommend a respirator. They are, they're hot and sweaty. I use a respirator when I am working in a smaller space, because like I said, at times when we're traveling, I don't always have a big airy space to paint in. I'm very lucky right now. But the respirators, it doesn't really matter what brand you get. 3M's good, Honeywell is good. You know, there's other good respirators out there. I use mine are Honeywell. but the respirator and filters I get are Honeywell brand. But whatever brand you find is fine. The thing to be sure of, and I honestly don't have my respirator even with me or I would show it to you, but your filters need to be a minimum of P100 rated filters, because that will filter out the volatile organic compounds, the vapors. That's one that's rated for vapors, the P100. Anything higher than that is even better, obviously, but more expensive. The higher you go, the more expensive. N95 will not filter out vapors, so it needs to be at least the P100s, if you're gonna even bother to wear one, because otherwise it doesn't do you any good. Now, that is a personal choice. I will use one if I'm working on something big, because then I do just have a lot of fumes and I don't want to breathe them, and it gives me a really bad headache anyway if I breathe it, too much of those fumes for too long. Plus, it's just not good for your lungs. But it is a personal choice if you want to use one or not. I choose not to use one when I'm working on these small things like I do for these videos, when I'm working in a big space. If I don't have appropriate ventilation, or it's, for whatever reason, I'm just having to use a ton of alcohol. If I start smelling the fumes, when I start really noticing the fumes, I will stop and take a break. If I don't have my respirator with me, like now, I will stop and walk away and let everything air out. So, just be safety conscious. If you choose to use a respirator, choose not to use a respirator, don't harass people over their choices, because I've seen this happen both ways, with people really fussing at other people about, well, if you don't use your respirator every time, then you're going to die soon. And other people saying, well, you're just silly to use a respirator because this is not going to hurt you. Well, do your own research, make your own choices. You're adults. What can I say? That's my best advice. Make your own choice, do your research. I did. And, I made my own choice about when I want to make sure I use a respirator. So, all right, let me think. I think that pretty much covers the supplies. This did kind of go on longer than I had hoped for, so I will be doing a part 2 where I'm doing beginning painting with this, where I'm just sort of showing you some of the simpler techniques, things that you might want to practice on to start with. So, not that any of it is just super, super complicated. It just takes practice to learn control, to, get the results that you want. So, well, I really appreciate you all. Those of you who made it all the way to the end of this, well, just bless you. That's all I can say. I feel sorry for you, having to listen to me drone on for the last 40 minutes. So, I'm sorry this did go on a little longer than I had planned, but I did want to try and make sure I had everything well explained, why I use some of the stuff I do, rather than just sticking it out there and going, I use this, 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 and this. So, all right, well, I hope that covered everything that you all that are new and are just starting out might need to know. If there's something that you need to know that I didn't cover in this that has to do with your supplies, then, leave a comment down below. Feel free to leave comments anytime. I'm the world's worst not to get around to answering them just because I stay busy. But I will try my best to, for the first day or two, try to keep up with videos that are coming, or comments that are coming in especially. And then when I have time, I go back and try and catch up with some of them. So if you do have a question about supplies on this video, please, not techniques, because we'll get into that on another video. But if you do have a question about the supplies, you can ask me. Oh, one quick thing about buying supplies and which supplies. I have gotten questions from people before that live, I am in the U.S., but I've gotten questions from people from other countries that want to know what supplies that they'll say, you know, I can't get this in my country, so what can I use? I can't answer those questions because I don't know what's available in those countries. And a lot of the stuff that those of you in other countries have available is going to be stuff that I don't have available here in the US. So I don't know what is exactly comparable to what I use. All I can show you is what I use. And then if you can't find it, you know, do a little experimenting on your own. If you can't get the Ranger alcohol inks in your country, then find a brand of alcohol inks that you can get in your country and give them a try. That's really all that I can, my only advice there. I can't answer questions about what those of you who are not in the U.S. can get. But I don't recommend ordering it from the U.S. and having it shipped to your country because that's ridiculously expensive. It's not worth it. You're better off to try to find something that's available to you there in your country. Now, if for whatever reason you are just bound and determined to get it from the U.S., that's your business. But to me, it just is a big waste of money when there will be something that is very similar that you can use. Like this hairdryer, a lot of people in other countries are not able to get it. It's costs about $20 in the US. By the time you order it and get it shipped to another country, it's going to cost you at least $40 or $50. And I have heard people say they have paid up to $100 to get the $100 US to get this sent to their country. Not worth it. Not worth it at all. Go find a hairdryer. It doesn't even have to be shaped like this. This is just the shape that I like. Find one the lowest wattage you can find. If you can find one under 500 watts, that's even better because that means your airflow is going to be even less and you're going to have better control. And, you know, and preferably one with a cool setting. Lowest wattage possible, cool setting. Look for whatever shape you like. This is just the shape that I like, that I can work with the best. So, you know, don't break yourself up trying to get supplies for this. It's not necessary. Just get what you absolutely have to start with until you figure out if you like it or not, because some people just don't care for it. And some people just don't like the smell of the inks or the alcohol. Like I said, if you use a respirator with the P100 or higher filters, you're going to knock out the smell. I don't smell anything when I'm using my respirator. So, and I don't think this stuff smells bad, and I don't think it smells very strong. Some of the inks smell stronger than others, but, you know, it's just kind of personal thing. So, all right, well, I will let you all go. I will stop jabbering at you, and I will be back very soon with part 2 of this, where I'm doing some beginning painting techniques and not one that's just all about the supplies. All right, well, everybody, have a great day. I love all of you. If you enjoyed this video, there are lots of others that you can check out on my channel. There should be a screen at the very end here that has a link to a playlist of my alcohol ink videos. Check that out. Consider subscribing. I do not have a regular upload schedule. It's just kind of when I have time to get something done. So subscribing is always a good thing for me. And be sure you turn on the notifications so that you can get the, you know, notified by YouTube that I do have a new video up, since you just never know when they're going to be coming. So, all right. Well, everyone, have a great day. I love all of you, and I'll see you real soon. Bye.